everyone! Since I lack any kind of skill in engineering or construction in real life, I like to build stuff in video games. Luckily, there's a lot to choose from, and if you're looking for something yourself, we have some recommendations for you. Together with the team at GameStar.de, we prepared a list of 20 strategy building games that are worth your time. And not only recent ones, this is like the best of compilation that will take you on a journey through the years. We'll go through all of them one by one, starting from the 20th on our list. One thing to note here is that each series is only represented by a single game on this list to make space for some interesting titles. So, top 20 strategy games in which you build stuff, not only cities, I guess. Let's begin. In Satisfactory, you're a hardworking pioneer dropped on an alien planet, and you start building a gigantic factory complex to mine resources as efficiently as possible. While initially you have to explore the world and mine ore by yourself, soon you acquire new tech, build conveyor belts, and create your very own factory. There's no objective rushing, there's no need for you to be super fast to achieve a certain goal, but rather it's all about planning and executing your plan to achieve an automated and efficient factory. The game was initially released in early access in 2019 and has been continuously developed and improved since then. Version 1.0 was released in September 2024, adding additional materials, production buildings, and technologies. Players definitely love it since the game is at 97% all-time positive reviews in Steam. Some details regarding 1.1 update have been announced, and the game is supposed to come to consoles at a future date, but no details have been announced yet. Against the Storm is a city-building game that cleverly combines the classic aspects of the genre with survival elements and roguelite mechanics. During the campaign, you build new settlements on behalf of the Queen in the hostile countryside surrounding the capital. By doing this, you not only provide for the humans, but also you have to attend to the needs of the beavers, lizards, harpies, and foxes. The randomly generated maps conceal various resources, random events, and even proper danger, which makes each settlement project unique. After 2 years in early access, the final version of Against the Storm was released in December 2023. The game is still being developed, with the current version of the game being at 1.7, and players definitely like the game a lot, with the current all-time positives on Steam at 95%. The game has a DLC available called Keepers of the Stone that, among other things, introduces a new species into the game. Oxygen Not Included is a space colony simulation in which you build an underground base on an asteroid. You must keep an eye on the needs of your workers and ensure that they have enough food, clean water, sufficient heat, and, you guessed it, a steady supply of oxygen. While initially you simply clear space for yourself on the asteroid, you'll soon have to develop new resources, build up an energy supply, and put some effort into relieving the stress among your colonists. Even though the game has pretty cute visuals, don't let that fool you, because Oxygen Not Included is a tough and complex survival building game that offers plenty of opportunities to solve problems creatively. As was the case with previous games, this one also started in early access and has been continually expanded. New game mechanics such as diseases, jobs, and space travel have been added, often guided by the community feedback. Even though the game left early access in 2019, quality of life updates and DLCs are constantly being released. The game has almost 120,000 reviews on Steam that add up to 96% of positive opinions from the players. That's good. Workers and Resources Soviet Republic is not a simple city builder, but rather a complex economic development game. As a diligent city planner, you essentially establish a Soviet republic, with all the economic ramifications that go with it. You create infrastructure, mine and process resources, and provide for your population. Entry level to this game is pretty high, as it feels a bit like a mix of Transport Tycoon with city skylines, bombarding you constantly with game mechanics. For example, where do you build your prefabricated buildings? How is the power and water supply organized? Where should the new railroad lead? And what the hell do you do with 6 types of waste? As usual, the game spent a while in early access, and it was released into a 1.0 version in June 2024. Before that, it had a short incident when the game got taken down from Steam in 2023 by actions of a fan, but luckily it managed to come back pretty quick. The game still gets updates, and some DLCs were released to add new maps, for example. 91% of the players had a positive opinion on the game, but if you want to jump into it, be ready for a difficult task. Although this game is still in early access, it's already serious enough in its development that it just had to make this list. In Dyson Sphere program, you pursue a major goal, the construction of the Dyson Sphere that has absolutely nothing to do with the vacuum cleaners. It's a hypothetical solar power plant that will surround a star and harness its energy. As you can expect though, the task is far from being completed, and as a robot you land on a planet and start small. You first collect raw materials by hand, establish your first mines, and build your first buildings. Soon you'll link your production facilities with assembly lines, generate electricity, and automate more and more processes. This way you will at some point create a gigantic industrial network, develop new planets, and get a little closer to your ultimate goal. Now you can spend a lot of time with this game already if you like to tinker, plan, and automate. While game is indeed still in early access with no specifics as to the 1.0 release, it is regularly updated with new content and features like a combat system, interstellar logistics, or new production chains. 97% positive reviews from over 76,000 players. This sounds good. So, 5 down, 15 more to go, and I think I forgot to mention that if I did not forget to do that, then in the description you have timestamps for when the next game begins, in case something doesn't really float your boat and you want to move forward. Although I'll appreciate if you watch the whole thing, but yeah, let's keep going. Once again, a game in early access, but an impressive one nonetheless. In Timberborn, humanity is long gone and the beavers are taking over. Yeah, what may seem bizarre turns out to be a mature city-building game so good that its furry protagonists quickly fade into the back of your mind. The industrious rodents primarily need food, wood, and water. What begins as a tranquil settlement grows into a beaver metropolis under our supervision. Rivers need to be dammed, fields irrigated, and sawmills built. You can create impressively complex settlements by deliberately altering the environment. Timberborn keeps getting regular updates with unusual ideas like tubeways or zip lines introduced into the gameplay. Reviews: 95% positive feedback from almost 30,000 players. So, who wants a beaver? Sorry, stupid joke. I guess if you're looking for games in the genre, you have to have heard about Factorio. The game came out of nowhere and set new standards with its gameplay. You don't just build a city, but a massive, fully automated factory. And if it's running properly, it's incredibly satisfying. You really have to think carefully from the very beginning about how you build your base to ensure everything runs smoothly. To do this, you'll use assembly lines and factories to create massive commodity chains that allow you to produce increasingly complex items. At the same time, you also have to keep an eye on environmental pollution, which attracts the planet's fauna, which in turn wants to destroy your painstakingly constructed base. While the development of the base game is complete and only minor patches are released for the game, Factorio got a major expansion called Space Age that basically picks up where the base game leaves the player. Factorio sits at 97% positive reviews from almost 170,000 players, and the expansion is almost as well received with 93% positive reviews. Dwarf Fortress was the first to popularize the gameplay loop of games like Rimworld. Here, you and your dwarves move into a procedurally generated world, build a fortress, and eventually watch it fall, because the game follows the idea that losing is fun. Its primary focus is on creating an exciting story as you go, and this begins with generating the world's backstory. To do this, your dwarves remember everything that happens in your fortress, such as when a necromancer revives the dead chickens in your storeroom. Your dwarves then record events like these in works of art that you can display in your base. Dwarf Fortress is completely free. Not only you don't have to pay for the download, you actually get the entire game with no microtransactions, no skins, nothing. However, since 2022, a paid version has also been released on Steam, featuring a completely redesigned graphics and a new user interface. But this is the only difference from the free version. All the updates and improvements are still included in the free version. The game has a cult following, and even the paid version found lots of people willing to purchase the game and leave positive reviews that add up to 95% actually. Games rarely reach for this kind of setting. Prison, I mean. Sure, we have a way out, we sometimes have levels set in prison, but games fully focused on prisons are a rarity. And it's equally surprising that the best game focusing around this subject is not about escaping prison, but rather ensuring no one escapes from it. And that's Prison Architect. The game offers a unique experience while building brick walls and rolling out barbed wire. You have these small stories happening all over. For example, you can have a seemingly harmless criminal suddenly managing to escape through a drain pipe, and his name was not Michael Scofield. In Prison Architect, one question always remains: how hard do we want to make the lives of our inmates? 20 hours in a holding cell without a bed? Or maybe a luxury room with a large screen? It's entirely up to you and your conscience. The game was originally released as an indie project and stayed in early access for many years. However, it was later picked up by Paradox, who now owns the rights to the game and regularly releases DLCs that introduce new concepts such as a prison island or farming. The game has 89% positive reviews, and it is also available on Microsoft's and Sony consoles, mobile devices, and Switch. A sequel was announced in 2024, but since then Paradox ditched the studio working on the game and brought a new one. The game had several delays, and the last update regarding the date came in August last year to openly state that the game is getting delayed again, but there was no new release date provided then, and there is still no release date now. Luckily, you can still enjoy the first game, just like a lot of players still are. Tropico 4 thrives on its unique scenarios. You're not just any mayor, but you're a Caribbean dictator, and you have to do everything you can to stay in power while diligently filling your Swiss bank accounts with absolutely legitimately acquired funds. In order to do that, you gotta dive deep into the political bag of tricks, deliver election speeches, manipulate votes, issue all sorts of edicts, and if necessary, eliminate your rivals. Tropico is incredibly diverse in gameplay with its economic, political, and life simulation elements. However, this game never takes itself too seriously and always remains a bit cheeky, which makes it fun to play, despite the unusual setting. Now, there are newer installments in the series. The latest one, Tropico 6, is a successful entry in which, for the first time, you could colonize multiple islands on the Caribbean map and have fun with stealing wonders of the world. However, Tropico 4 is still the king of the series, mostly due to its depth. After all, players gave it 91% positive reviews on Steam. And we are halfway there. I hope you're still with me, but in case you need some coffee or soda, I can wait. Yeah, never mind, let's just go. This is a classic, and it's a nice way to enter our top 10. I'm sure you know this game, but if you lived under a rock or never experienced joy in your life, then let me explain. Rollercoaster Tycoon is a series about building and managing an amusement park. While Rollercoaster Tycoon 3 works perfectly as a pure city building and economy game, the real highlight is quite clear. We get to build our own roller coasters, down to the smallest detail, and then we get to ride them, which is just cool. Since the release of the third game, the series was never able to live up to its peak. Instead of complex construction games, various mobile spin-offs followed, and Rollercoaster Tycoon World was the first to try to return to its roots, but it was a completely bug-ridden disaster. Fortunately, there are two good successors to the genre, and that's Planet Coaster and Parkitect, if you're looking for something more recent. However, if you'd like to get the OG experience in a slightly better version, then in 2020 a complete edition was released with all of the game's expansions, and 87% of Steam players decided that it is fun. I mean, owners of the game. Meanwhile, fans are also working on a free open source version of the first game in the series. 0.1 version was released in 2022, but recently somebody asked if the project is still alive, and one of the devs said yes, but they have a shortage of people to make anything faster. If you'd like to try it out though, then look for free RCT. Now this is when it gets hellishly good. Arguably, this is the meanest building game of all time. In Dungeon Keeper 2, you take on the role of a sinister dungeon lord and build a dungeon that even the most noble of heroes will find difficult to navigate and conquer. You get to carve rooms out of the stone, build specific types of rooms to invite certain types of monsters to come to your place, you'll have to gather gold to be able to pay your monsters, and generally you'll have to keep them happy. You will also need to set up traps to keep enemies from destroying your dungeon. One of the coolest features I remember from when I was a kid was being able to possess the body of a monster and actually walk through your dungeon and fight the enemies as this monster. If you want even more of a throwback, you can try the first game, although it's worth trying it with a fan-made expansion called Keeper FX. This thing fixes bugs, adds new campaigns, and improves the AI. The second game has Open Keeper in the works, but I'm not sure this project will ever be fully released. These days, the series is rather dead. EA released Dungeon Keeper Mobile years after Dungeon Keeper 2, and fans hated it. Luckily, there are games like Dungeons 3 or War for the Overworld, but it never took off in the same way as the original games. Dungeon Keeper 2 has 95% positive reviews on Steam, although this is a pretty old game that was added to Steam pretty recently, so there's not a lot of reviews there. Still, I totally recommend playing it. It was always so much fun. Rimworld at its core is about survival. A group of people is stranded on an alien and begins to build a colony. What really sets Rimworld apart from the crowd is its seemingly inexhaustible supply of curious stories and adventures. Something is constantly happening, and we have to react to it. Along the way, we'll encounter the egos and behavioral patterns of our inhabitants, as well as the changeable weather, nasty bandits, and dangerous monsters. This continuously creates new stories about our colony, often leading into absurd and sometimes tragic situations. Rimworld was in early access since 2013, and it was constantly improved, expanded, and polished. The last update for the game on Steam is listed for May 2024, but the game got major DLCs since launch, and there's tons of mods made by the community that you can choose from. 97% positive reviews from over 175,000 players also speaks for itself. As the story goes, the legendary developer Will Wright realized one day that he was having more fun working with the level editors of many games than playing the actual games themselves. So he created a game that was essentially one big level editor. And with Simcity, he built the foundation for the modern city building genre. The sequel to the game, Simcity 2000, is still considered one of the best games of its kind and offers an incredible number of options for us as mayors to prove ourselves in all areas of city planning, including fending off a bizarre alien monster. Simcity 2000 was far from being the end of the road. Several sequels followed the game, dominating the city building genre. It wasn't until the remake of SimCity that the series had to relinquish its dominance, because it simply slimmed down the classic formula too much. Fortunately, another game was able to take up the mantle again, but you'll find about it soon enough. No Steam version of SimCity 2000 is available, but you can get it either at EA's store or GOG. SimCity's success spawned a wide variety of city-building games, and among the best were the historical ones from Impressions. It started with Caesar, but Pharaoh was the real highlight. That's when we got to build the pyramids. There's not a lot of games where you get to build such impressive and elaborate monuments. And after all, what other setting could be more fitting for a building game than ancient Egypt? However, every installment in the historical series is still highly playable today, and your favorite may simply depend on the setting you like. With the two games that I already mentioned, you also have Zeus with a Greek setting and the Emperor for the fans of the Far East. Pharaoh was a lot of fun, but any hopes for the sequel disappeared with Impressions games being shut down just 5 years after the release of the game. A few former developers created Children of the Nile, but the game didn't quite match Pharaoh's legacy. Today you can also choose from Builders of Egypt or a remake of the original game called Pharaoh: A New Era. It's not as beloved as Pharaoh from 1999, but 74% on Steam is not too bad. In 2014, the one-man project called Banished put the much larger SimCity to shame. While EA's city-building simulator stumbled over annoying online features and only pretended to be a vibrant metropolis, Banished shone with a refreshingly different concept. Not only did it perfectly simulate the lives of the inhabitants of a medieval town, it was also about more than just building. In Banished, you're fighting for survival from the very first second. And you wouldn't believe it considering the somewhat sleepy-looking village, but the winters in this game are so harsh that if you don't prepare well enough, the entire village will starve. Your main resource in this game are the villagers themselves, who will grow up, multiply, and die of old age, or because of some other reasons. You rarely hear about this these days, but Banished was completed and hasn't received any major updates or expansions since. And yet, the game shaped the genre. When survival building games like Frostpunk appear today, they are usually inspired by Banished. Despite the latest update of any kind being from October 2015, the game to this day is at 90% positive reviews on Steam. As promised, it's time to look at the game that beat SimCity to its top spot in city builders back in the day. This is basically modern-day SimCity. While this series alienated its fans with tiny cities and a mandatory online connection, a small Finnish studio delivered exactly what city builders wanted. Massive cities, endless space for tinkering and optimization, and impressive mod support. This is definitely one of the best city building games ever made. Cities Skylines now has numerous expansions, countless mods worth your time, and it is still considered a better game than its sequel that was released in October 2023. Original Cities Skylines sits at 92% positive reviews, with over 200,000 of those left by the players, while the sequel only has 53%. So if you look for a great city building game, play the first one and leave Cities Skylines 2 alone in its corner. It's finally time for our top 3. Let's see which games made it to the podium of our top 20 strategy games in which... never mind, you know the drill. Frostpunk is a series about surviving in the harsh conditions when the apocalyptic blizzard hit the world. The first game got a lot of good opinions, and the sequel was obvious to be made. Frostpunk 2 takes place 30 years after the first game and continues the grim mix of survival, management, and settlement building. Once again, we take control of one of humanity's last cities, defying the deadly cold with the warming generator, at least for a while. The city's coal reserves are running low, food is becoming increasingly scarce, and the population has long since split into political camps with their own ideas about the future. Your task now is to represent the interests of the citizens and at the same time make difficult decisions to, hopefully, ensure the survival of humanity. So you don't just manage a city, but you also establish outposts, research new technologies, and get into that political arena with your head held high. However, if the residents of your city are unhappy with you, you will get sacked and lose the game. Now, because this is an editorial effort of more than just one person, Frostpunk had to be there, and it was decided that it had to be Frostpunk 2. However, I am making this video, so I'll put it as a note here. I much preferred the first Frostpunk to the second one. The sense of survival in the original game is much heavier, although the second game is definitely much more advanced in terms of city building gameplay aspects. However, I'm not myself in this opinion, because while Frostpunk 2 has 75% of positive reviews from players, the first game still sits at 92%. So I recommend trying them both, but if you have to choose just one, try the first one, it should be cheaper as well. Okay, it's time for an absolute classic. I guess when you think of a game that's about building and you lived for a while like me, you will immediately think of The Settlers. No other series exemplifies the sheer joy of managing a tranquil village full of bustling workers more than this one. Sure, we can argue whether it was Settlers 2 or Settlers 3 that was the highest point in the series, but in the end we decided that Settlers 2 will take the spot with its manually buildable roads, and which is even more elegantly designed than the following entry. And we're probably not alone with this decision, because that's why the game was given a surprisingly successful 3D remake. However, if you'd like to experience the original game and you still prefer the 2D take on the series, you can play it in a bit fresher version as part of the Settlers History collection. If you hoped for yet another life for the series, unfortunately the most recent game, The Settlers' New Allies, proved to be a bit disappointing. As a result, this might mean that the series won't come back for a while. But if you want to get to know the classics in this genre, give Settlers 2 and 3 a try. And if you can't stand the retro vibe that these games might already have for you, then take a look at Pioneers of Pagonia. It's a spiritual successor to Settlers that has the original Settlers creator working on it. Okay, for the top spot, we could only have one winner here. For years, it was a debate whether Anno or The Settlers should take the crown for the best series of city-building games, but while Settlers recently found itself in a bad spot, Anno remained reliably good for the most part. The futuristic spin-off didn't really suit everyone's taste, but those days are over, and Anno 1800 took a lot of time out of everyone's lives. No other building game is as large, as well integrated, and at the same time as atmospheric and accessible as Anno. Here, everything connects well together, providing a seemingly endless boost of motivation for the player. Anno 1800 combines the strengths of classic series representatives with modernity. Nowhere else is technological progress more evident than in Anno 1800's industrialization scenario. We have to admit, it wasn't easy to decide which game should become a representative for this series, 1800 or 1404. In the end, we have to admit that Anno 1800 is probably here to stay for much longer. The game received some great expansions over the years, and thanks thanks to numerous free updates and cool mods from the community, it has continued to improve and become more complete. And now there's already a new entry in the series on the horizon, Anno 117 Pax Romana, but we still have to hear a bit more about the sequel. However, if you have to choose one game from this list to play, choose this one. Now, I'm sure that some games that could be here did not really make a list. For example, you can ask, where is Manor Lords? You have other early access games there. And my answer is, hopefully in the comments section. I'd love to see what other games you would include here, and in this way we can create a more complete list than what we just put in the top 20. Thank you for sticking with me till the end. Thank you for watching. Take care.